Big blow for big government control freaks. Parents who choose private schools for their kids are just normal middle-class people, and a new study proves it. A new study out from the Fraser Institute indicates that people who choose private or independent schools for their children make roughly about the same amount as those who choose to utilize the public school system. Let's take a look at some of the Fraser Institute's findings. They found, on average, families with children in independent schools earned $130,127 in after-tax income compared to $97,301 on average for families with children in public schools. Okay, so they make a little bit more on average, but contrary to popular myth, people using private schools are still not rich people. According to the study, only 4.7% of all independent schools in Canada feature characteristics commonly associated with elite prep schools. Of the almost 370,000 students attending independent schools across the country, less than 45,000 students, only 12%, attend this type of prep school. So here's where the numbers get pretty interesting. When you remove the people who send their kids to elite academies like Bill Morneau does, the average after-tax income for the remaining families with children enrolled in independent schools falls to $95,549, which is 1.8% less than the average income for families with children attending public schools. So people who send their kids to private and independent schools are actually slightly poorer than families who send theirs to public schools. Let me go back a little though and give you a bit of context. What a lot of people don't realize is that private education in Alberta is funded by the government at 70% the rate of the public system. It's been that way since 1967. I think this is great. It's Alberta's homegrown solution to the voucher system. This allows parents to choose the school that is best for their children without having to take financial barriers to accessing those schools into consideration. And it saves the government money, about 30% per child. Who in their right mind would be against this? Well, there are a lot of people who are against Alberta funding private education. They say it subsidizes rich people's choices. But this Fraser Institute study clearly shows that people accessing private education aren't rich. They're the same as everybody else, paying the same amount of school taxes as everybody else, but only getting 70% of the value. If private schools only receive 70% of the funding the public system does, it means those middle-class parents who choose private education are actually the ones subsidizing everyone else with 30% of their child's funding. More and more parents are choosing something other than mainstream public education for their children. Enrollment at charter schools increased 229% over a 13-year period here in Alberta. And the majority of private and alternative education in Alberta is religious, at about 70%. So what does this mean? The more the left pushes their agenda in public education, the more normal parents recoil in horror from it. Religious parents don't want their small children taught about the gender unicorn at school. Some parents want to be able to have their children meet all their educational requirements while still being allowed to believe that it's perfectly okay to be pro-life. Maybe these parents are just like me, and they don't see the educational value or even the appropriateness of a drag show over the lunch hour. In short, 70% of parents who are choosing private and charter education are doing so because they want their children to grow up with their values and not their teachers' values. The rest are motivated by their children's educational needs and other factors. So, kids getting their needs met. Isn't that what everybody wants? That's what I keep hearing, but that hasn't stopped the left from wanting to dismantle Alberta's diverse educational system. And it isn't just left-wing organizations that want to do this. It's the NDP themselves. Last year, the NDP hijacked a legislature motion brought forward by Rick McIver that would reaffirm Alberta's strong commitment to choice in education as directed by parents. The NDP tried to add an amendment that would support alternative education only if public schools weren't available. This caused a standoff in the legislature that ended with Rick McIver being removed by the Sergeant at Arms. The Education Minister, David Egan, has stated that he's going to examine funding that private schools in Alberta receive. This examination is at the behest of left-wing NDP-led front groups like Public Interest Alberta. Can we all just stop and take a minute to appreciate that these are the same people on the left who tell us that children are all different and that we need to embrace and celebrate diversity while at the same time trying to force everyone's very different children into statist, cookie-cutter schools? The big government worshipping left like to say they care about the poor. They also like to say that they care about quality education. But I'm not sure I believe them. Why are they so keen to dismantle a more cost-effective system where one's financial situation doesn't block access to great schools? At the end of the day, it's because it's not really about education, and it's not even about helping the poor. It is, and it will always be, about government control over our kids dressed up in the costume of fairness. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. I'm going to the UN Climate Change Conference in Bonn, Germany this year. I'm going to show you the inside of these globalist conferences that nobody else will show you. If you can help cover the costs, go to therebelun.com.